I got the time right. Mm-hmm. Everything here. Mashiach, like it's Gan Eden. Here we go. Good morning, Kevan. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Where's your smile? Hello? Oh. Machaya. Some good Columbus coffee.
You're in Columbus?
We are in Columbus. Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
If you have a safer, just for me to be able to make this out bigger. If you have, it can be a go, it can be over there. It can be Sfarim also. All right.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Not to be so tall. It's fine, lay down. Oh, wait, no, not like this. More? No, Mama's perfect. Okay, check my fine, verify number 35. I can't do that. Whenever I'm not in the way, I have to verify who's Chamat Sola. Let me go check out my phone. All right, Nisht is Nisht, nothing I can do. Nothing I can do. All right, if anyone on the chat, I think that's Mendel or Hassan, if they can get me into YouTube Live, that would be great. And if not, it's great. Yeah, nothing I can do. Can you text Mendel and Hassan, ask them if they can quickly verify my this verification they need to make in order for me to go on live. Thank you. Guys, just give me another second. I'm just going to try to get this on live. It's okay. Some Zeir Shal Mitzvah is sehr good. I don't think it's happening. Okay, good. It's not up. There's nothing I can do. iPhone 2. All right, forget about that. All right, vamos. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. We're going to be learning the final chapter in the Nedarim, Perek Gimel, making a seal. Hilchos Nezirus, Prakim Aleph and Beis. We're dedicating this class for the tremendous Hatzlacha of the Carmichael family, of Rabbi Yaakov Carmichael, and for Triple Whale. Hilchos Nedarim, Perek Gimel has 25 halachas. We're going to be learning in this chapter the procedure of how hafara is done. We're going to learn about something called bitul neder, as we'll explain. There's hafara and there's bitul, not the same thing. We're going to learn that there is no shlichus when it comes to hafara, and the opposite of hafara is to be mekayim the neder, and the Rambam is going to conclude with a very general hashkafic approach regarding the Nedarim. Perikut Gimel Halacha Aleph says the Rambam Mefer Adam oy mekayim nidrei ishtoi oy bitoi b'chalashim. The hafara that as we learned yesterday, that a father has the right over his daughters, and the husband's right over the wife can be done in any language. The point is, even if the wife doesn't understand what the father/husband is saying, there's no need for her to understand it. It's about him understanding, him knowing what he's saying. She doesn't have to hear that. And as we learned yesterday, a father can make a hafara even if he doesn't know that she has Nedarim. If once he hears it, he has that limit of the same day. He can make a blanket statement. If my daughter has any Nedarim, I'm being made for them. So she doesn't have to know about it. She doesn't have to hear it. She doesn't have to understand it. How do we do it? Here, that's what's key. The words that the husband/father has to say is either the word mufar, let's type mufar means nullify, or it's batal, that means that the vow is void, or he has to say the words ein neder zeklum, this vow is of no consequence. And any other expression that implies that the vow is not nullified from the outset. Now, it's very important that we spoke it out, that I made a correction. And even though the Rambam writes here in Halacha Beis that hafara is akiras haneder meikarai, the Rambam explicitly, we learned this yesterday. We learned this in Perikut Beis Halacha Yutes. We're going to be learning this today in Perikut Gimel Halacha Tezvav. It's very clear that it is hatanas nedarim done by a Yachad Mumcha or by a Beis Din. They have the power to nullify a neder retroactively. The father and the wife, they don't nullify the neder retroactively. So everyone is challenged with the words of the Rambam when he's writing regarding hafara, that it's akiras haneder me'ekare. The Kirya Sefer suggests the following: the husband and the father, they only have the power to nullify the neder mikan ulahaba. But when they nullify the vow, it's done in a way where there isn't any roisham left from the neder at all. And even though the Beis Din or the Chacham is matir the neder taka retroactively, it's lemafreya, but there is some sort of roisham. And that's the meaning of the Rambam, that they completely uproot it, not retroactively, but they uproot it in a way that going forward, there is no rishima at all. In other words, is there some sort of negativity of someone breaking their vow or going against their vow after the hatara? On some level, yeah. Even though it was retroactively mutar, but there is a rishima. And that's the suggestion of the Kirya Sefer, but the question is a bit bigger than the answer. But make no mistake that even though the Rambam uses the words that it's akiras haneder me'ikara, it doesn't mean me'ikara back in time. It means from its root, but only mekanu lahabo. And another bein bifoneha, he can make that statement whether he's in front of her. Bein shaloi bifoneha, but if he makes a statement that's not that clear, he says, "I can't bear you taking a vow." What does that mean? It's not clear. Can't bear you, but she did it. Or ein kaneder, this is not a vow. Maybe this is not a vow means that he thinks that this vow halachically is not a vow, not that he's being made for it. Or hareza lo hefer. That's not. It has to be an expression. The vow was a vow, and the husband now, the father now is nullified. If he says the words machil leich, your vow is forgiven, mutar leich, it is released. Now it is released. That's the words that a chacham uses, that the Beis Din uses. That's not the word that a father/husband should use. Oy shari leich, this is absolved for you. Also loy omar klum. Wow. She'ein ha'av ha'bal matir k'may ha'chacham elo oiker haneder mitchilasoi u'mefiroi. No, the big difference is that the chacham has to have a reason. And as we learned in the previous segment, that by Hilchos Shavuos, that sometimes, even if the person who took the vow or the oath, they don't know a reason, we give them a reason. We open up a door for them, but there has to be a reason. He has to ultimately say, I regret it. Had I known, I would have made it. By Hafaras Nadarim, no such thing is needed. Even if the wife is saying, no, I want the vow. The daughter is saying, I want the vow. There are rights that the father has, again, as we learned, only until she becomes a begettes. And husband and wife, only the Nedarim that are either Inui Nefesh or Dvarim Shabbein Noil or Bein. It's not Stam. But if it falls into that category, that's the right that the husband has. The Kates and Mekayim. Now, the opposite of Hafara is for them to be Mekayim, for them to express it, for them to accept it. How is that done? He going to Yomer, he says the words, Kayim Lichi, I uphold it for you. Yofen Nodart, wow, it's good that you vowed. Ein Kamoisach, there's no one like you. Well, it's good for a man to tell his wife there's no one like you, but he's saying it in the context of he heard about, wow, there's no one like you. That means that he's happy with the vow. But if you wouldn't have done it, I would have administered this vow to you. That's called a kiyum. However, halacha dalid hamabatel nidrei period. Now we're going to get more to kiyum. Don't forget, if the guy hears it and he says nothing, that's also a kiyum. So we're going to come back to kiyum soon. But if such a kiyum of halachi gimel has a consequence, as we'll see. Now the Rambam is introducing something which is the following. There is a difference between hafara and bittul. New thing, chacham matir. Father/husband, whenever they could, they're mefer, as we said until now, and they can be mavatal. And bittul haneder and hafaras neder are two different things. Says the Rambam, hamavatal nidre ishtoyoy bitoy. It does not need to be verbalized. Hafara has to be verbalized. Mufar, batal, ein neder zeklum. He has to say that. Bittul is not something that you do through a word, and there is something that you actually do through which, and what is that? Halacha 5. The man will force his daughter/wife. Forcing means placing food in front of her, that food, that item that she made a vow not to partake of. Not forcing it down in her mouth, chas v'shalom. Placing it in front of her, which he's doing an action that shows there's no neder. She says, I'm not going to eat, all of the meat in the world is usher to me. Him giving her a plate of meat, that's called Yachuv Oisel Lasis Davash Asrois. And when he does that action without saying a word, that also nullifies her. Bittul. Aval hafara, the meaning of hafara, which is what people are more familiar with, because hafara is that which the Torah explicitly speaks about. Eno kaifa oisa. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't take an action. Ela meifirlo. He says the words of hafara umanicha. And imratzasa oisa, the imratzasa eno oisa. He's not doing an action going against what she said. He's simply saying the words hafara. Halacha vav ketzad, for example, if this wife/daughter makes a vow, or if she makes an oath, that what, for example, I won't eat, I won't drink, and he says the words, that's it. And from now on, however, if he took the food that she made prohibited upon her, and he tells her the words, take it and eat it, take it and drink it. You understand? Even though he didn't say the words hafar. And actually, as we'll see later, he doesn't even have to say tili. He's doing a gesture that's showing her that he's going against her vow. That's bitul neder. Halacha zayin. Hamefen nidrei bitul yoy ishtoy. Sarech lo hoitzi desvasav. Ve'im hefer beliboy eino mufar. Aval hamavatel. This is like a synopsis of the difference. He doesn't have to say a word. He's mavatel beliboy belvad, but he has to externalize it by taking an action like we learned before, which is the koifa oisa las oisa. Koifa again doesn't mean what people might think it means here in English. The force means he places that item that she asked, he places that in front of her, and doesn't matter whether she ate or not. His action of going against what she's saying is his way of saying it's batal. Now this is beautiful. Unlike, guys, if you remember the details that we learned when it came to Hataras Nedarim. Truth be told, the Rambam didn't speak that much by Hataras Nedarim. The Rambam says that the way you make Hataras Shvuos, that we want to know for Shvuos, the same thing goes for Nedarim. And one of the rules we learned there is that you may not do it on Shabbos if it's not Shabbos related. Shabbos related, you can be mataned on Shabbos. If it's not Shabbos related, normally the rule is you can't use Shabbos for the week. Now, don't forget, guys, hafara can only be done, as we learned yesterday, on the day that you heard the vow. So if he is aware of the vow on Shabbos, he can't delay it until Sunday to say, if it's not Shabbos related, do it tomorrow. Tomorrow, he has no more power. So hafaras nedarim can even be done on Shabbos, and that's where l'tzayich Shabbos, you know that. Even Torah can be done. The chiddush is Bein Shaloi L'Tzoydech Shabbos. Now, but when he does it on Shabbos, he should not say, that's a rule b'chal and Hilchos Shabbos. If and when you do things on Shabbos, if it's somewhat not that Shabbos-dik, at least make a shinoi. What would be the shinoi? Don't use the normal words mufar lech, the way he would use the words during the week. Ella, he should use the medium of bitul. It's better. Because he's not saying that I'm making this halachic, I'm enacting this nullification. Halachites. If a man says, whatever you'll make later, I'm already being Mekayim, or I'm already being Mefer, I'm already nullifying it. Loi Amar Klum. Now, guys, if you remember in Halacha Yud Beis, we learned yesterday, in Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis, we learned that you could be made for the nether before it goes into effect. People contradict it. It's not a contradiction. See, there's a couple of steps. By Hataras Nedarim, the guy says on Nisan, I'm making a neder on Nisan that in Iyar I won't be able to eat meat. You can be mated it because it didn't go into effect yet. What we learned yesterday, Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis, is that when it comes to the father/husband, Hafaras Nedarim, if she said those words, even though the vow did not yet go into effect, because it's a month prior, but she already said that next month the vow goes into effect, the husband could be made for it. What we're learning over here is that if she didn't say anything, she said nothing. The guy is making us a preempting. If you'll make anything that you'll say, I'll never between now and next month, I'm already being made for it. That's not effect. Because nothing was even said. Another thing, this power has to be done by the father or husband. He cannot appoint a proxy. He has to do it because it says Isha Yikimena, the Isha Yifenena. And that's not only regarding the husband, but he must do it. As we learned in the Gemara. She made a vow against two items. I cannot partake of figs and grapes. Now we learned the rule by Hataras Nedarim that neder shuhutar niktsasai hutar kulay. We don't say this by Hafara. He said, "Oh, the te'enim good. Don't eat the figs. Figs are all mine. But I don't like I'm going to be mefer the part regarding grapes." Or whichever direction. And we don't say by hafara as we say by hatara that neder shehufa miksasu far kuloi. The way we say by hatara. And all of this is coming from one thing. You should know it's coming from that which we learned yesterday. We corrected it yesterday. That a chacham is oiker the neder mei ikare. And therefore, if the only ability is either, so to say, to undo it from the outset, then when you do when you go like to the foundation of a building, guys, think about it. You build a building, and you build 10 stories. Can you remove the 9th story? Yeah, you could. The 3rd story is going to stand. When you go back l'mafreya and you begin to shake the foundations, the whole thing collapses. So by hatara, since it's takel l'mafreya. Remember the deal. If something is being removed from the cloud, the whole thing is removed. Everything collapses. By hafara, it's only mikanu lahava. Since it's only mikanu lahava, you have the power to nullify some and to fakert and to be mekayim the other part. Halacha Yudalef, Misha Nadra Ishtoi. If and listen to this now, one's wife makes a vow, and he hears the vow. Again, he has the right now in the B'yoyim Shomei to nullify it, to be Mekayim it, and what he does is V'hispis Atzmei B'nadara. He extends the vow to himself. Oh, I'm also like you. That is Kiyum. That's the Mekayim it. Oh, he made his vow dependent on her vow. Any he no longer can be made. Even though he never said the words "Amakayim your vow," because when he is toilet, his neder on her neder, no, you cannot nullify your own vow. Actually, there's going to be a legal loophole where you could nullify your vow, but we don't want you to do that because it says lo yachal devare. Even if it's going to be effective, just the act of being meichel on your own words is not acceptable. It's not okay to do. Oh, so if he leans on her, that means he's Mekayim her. But in the other way, not that who he makes a vow. But me today is us. He has to lose weight. Okay, today is us on me. I'm not making that vow. Make it very clear. We're just learning about this. And she says, "Oh, I'm like you." So she's leaning on him in that direction. As long as it's about, if his vow is not leaning on her vow, then it's okay. Now the Rambam is actually going to say that when his vow is leaning on her vow, he could be made for her vow, but he's not allowed to do it. But if he doesn't, could mean it gets effective. What actually happens there is that since he knocked off her, she's his foundation, so he knocked his vow himself off. So he's not going to be allowed to be you can eat the meat, you can eat the cake. But that act is bal yachal devaray. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Halacha Yudleis. Ketzad Shoma Ishto examples. That she said Haneni Nezirus. So he says va'ani. He's leaning. So Eino Yachal Lahafim. Eino Yachal doesn't mean he cannot. It means he should not, as we'll see in a moment. And they both are Nezirim. But if he said Haneni Nazir and she heard and she said va'ani, then it's like that. But made for long. Our husband takes a vow, and he was adjuring her. You understand? He now says, and you will also be bound by that. Now, can he verbalize it for her? She said, Amen. He began his first. And then he extended it to her. So again, he made it all together. Now, guys, she must consent. A guy, a man, a husband, a father, he has the power to be made for it. I cannot compel anyone else to make a vow. Point is that if he made his and he extended his on her and she consented, so now they linked one with the other. Same concept. Once these two vows are linked one to the other, he should not nullify hers. He could, but he's not allowed to, because when he nullifies her, it's going to be a nullification of his, and then he's going to be violating by Yachal Devar. Ve'im nadar, if he took a vow, and then he asked her, he asked her to know, what do you want? Like, do you also want to have a vow like this? And she said, amen, or yes. That's not called linked. See, the very fact that he's asking her, it's not called linked, and therefore he can be made for her neder. If he makes a statement, and you also, even though he doesn't have the right to do it, she has to say yes. But since in his words is, I'm doing it and you're doing it, it's one neder, that's where Ein Yachal Lahafik. Ketzad, Amar Lo Hareni Nazir Va'at. Koloimer, Va'at Nezirus Kamoisi. Without her amen, it's ineffective. But when she says amen, it comes out that he made a neder together for him and for her. That Ein Yachal Lahafik. He should not nullify it. It's not allowed to. Then he says, do you want to be a nazir like me? And she says, amen. Even though she said yes, and it doesn't matter. The fact that he asked the question, it's like two separate vows. Now, guys, the words ve'im heifer law, very important, does not go on the last case. It goes on the first case. It doesn't go when he asked of her. This is important. It goes when he made a statement. I'm a nazir and you. So the Rambam is saying that if he's not allowed to be mefer, but it doesn't mean that it will be ineffective. If he's mefer it, shaloi batul, since he does have the power of being mefer her neder, and since it was done together, when he knocks off that part, everything gets knocked off. So he effectively was able to be Yachel Devarim. Once he did it, he's not bound by the vow. He should not have done it because by Yachel Devarim. But if he did it, Shaloi Batel, Shezek Kimi Shatola Nidroi the Nidra. Now, Amroloi, if she tells him, Hareini Nezira, she doesn't. Amar doesn't, and you link together, that she cannot impose it on him. And he says, Amen. Here also, Ene Yachalahafer, here it's different. You know why Ene Yachalahafer? Because when he said Amen, he didn't only say Amen and I also. Amen that you are a Nezira. That's called he was Mekayim, her Nedarim. And the Vishama Achar, another person heard her vow. And that person attached himself to her by saying, and I'm like her, and then the father or the husband heard her vow and was made for it. So, Chavre, what did we learn by oaths? What did we learn by Hatoras Nedarim? That if you knock off the first vow, all of the other vows that were linked to the first is automatically knocked off. That's because a chacham is not matir the neder retroactively. So if you knock it off retroactively, nothing that grew out of it is going to stand. There's nothing to stand on. Since hafaras nedarim is only mikanu lahava, even though the husband has the power to be made for her neder, but the other person that attached himself to her is chayiv. Clearly, again, not limafreya. Me'ikari means that there's no roishah. But it's not lemafreya. Allah Tazayin. Ha'isha she'emo ba'al and ve'eno b'rishus ha'av, and she says harei habasar olai asar olai la'achar shloshim yoyim. She only has the vow go into effect after 30 days. During those 30 days, she gets married. Ooh. Guys, don't forget we learned yesterday that the husband cannot be made fit in the daughter that she made prior to marriage. Here the chiddush is the vow only went into effect after she was already married. She got married within those 30 days. She's ready to do Sabal. Still, because what we look at is not when the neder was chal, when it went into effect. We look at when she verbalized the vow. And that is concerning what the pasuk says in Parshas Matos. The neder almana ugrusha yakum aleha. That's the ending of the words. And the Gemara says, of course yakum aleha. Why would you think otherwise? What's the chiddush? She's like a man. She has no father. She has no husband. Chiddush is that that's the case. Even though she said it's only going to go into effect in 30 days, and she got married prior to the 30 days, the husband should have the right. That's the Yakum Aleha. Still has nothing to do. As we learned yesterday in Perek Yud Aleph, Halacha Yud Zayin. Nadra Tachas Bailo. That one, or she should become a Nezira only after 30 days. And when the husband heard it, they had feet along. And that is something that he could. What we learned today before, that you can't be made for a neder, it's if she didn't even make it yet. Here she said the words. That was yesterday's Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis. Here it can be made for, or if he divorces her within 30 days, which means that she's now a gerusha, she's now an almana, but his hafara is effective. It's consistent. Halacha Yud Ches, almana ugerusha she'amram. Wine will be forbidden to me when I marry. So it's not about 30 days, but she linked into her marriage. So as we learned above, right? Then he says, because we only go at when did she say the neder? She said the neder prior to marriage, even though it's called Inoy Nefesh. When she's married, she says, I am prohibited to eat meat when I will get divorced. Here again, it's all consistent. The Baal can be made for it, and if she gets divorced, she'll be allowed. Halacha Yutes Hamakayim beliboy. So we learned bittul can be beliboy and through an action. Hafara has to be beliboy. What about kiyum? Now let's focus on kiyum. So Hamakayim beliboy. He didn't say I agree to it. Hareze kayim. But Hamefer beliboy ain't a mufar. Come on, Shabiyaru. Lefikach. Now we're going to go to a husband, Biyoim Shamai, that's changing his mind. If he was Mefer Believe, which is Gurnish, he can still be Makayim. Now, how do you know what's in a person's heart? Well, I'll tell you. If he is not Mefer Biyoim Shamai, it will go into effect. But it's more than that. Because if he has in mind to be Mekayim it, he cannot change his mind afterwards. Im Kiyam Beliboy, who knows that? God, the Eibishter knows it. He cannot, even on the same day. Ella im Chazak, only Torah Kedei Dibur. Kedei Shelo Yiyah Koyach Tavarim Shemali Begadol Mokoyach Hametz B'Sfasav regarding Torah Kedei Dibur. So that's a big thing. Now let's go further. If the husband is Mekayim and he wants to be Mefer, what now? Is it too late? So the Rambam is going to say that a husband's kiyum of his wife's, father's kiyum of his daughter's neder is like a neder proper, and a neder can become nullified by going to a base, by going to a chacham. So a husband can do kiyum. He can then be matir his kiyum, and then if it's b'yoyim shoma, you can do afara. His hafara cannot be undone. A hafara is not like a neder, and kiyum is like a neder. That's halacha for him. And then and but in the other direction, and he regrets that he nullified it in like we mentioned, kiyum neder is like a neder, and for a neder you can be you can go to a base. Hafaras nedarim is not like a neder. If you did it, you did it. Not a halacha chaval. Not a me'oirasa shenodra. Remember that Naira Morasa, that she's under the jurisdiction of both the father and the chassan, and Vikiyam Lavi Alavadi. Only the father was Mekayim, or only the husband was Mekayim, and the other one was Mefer. The other one was Mefer. Ooh. Now the one that was Mekayim undid it, and we just said you can be matir your kiyum. So can he now do the hafara, and now you have both hafaras? No, not anymore. In other words, if there is a hefsek, a halachic hefsek between one hafara and the other, because when he was mekayim it, if he would not be matir the kiyum, he can no longer be made for it. That's called a hefsek. Once you're mafsik between one and the other, you no longer can join the partnerships. Like in life, some partnerships, once you break it, it's broken. Some of them not. But here, yeah. The guy said twice. Kiyum Yaakov is like a neder. You can be matir the kiyum. He said, kayim lech. So first of all, just like ein shua chal al shua, ein kiyum chal al kiyum, because there's no room for it to be chal. There's no room, but it's hanging in the air. So if you're going to be matir the first kiyum, this is so good. The other one that you made, boom, is now going to have room to be chal and still kayim. V'nishal ala komer eshoina hashniya chala olav teluya ka'al yesher vetzes olav. Sometimes the commentators use that expression. Now, if he says the genius kayim lach umutalech, and then he explains himself. And my if he says, really, first I'm made for it, and then I'm going to be Mekayim. That's what, in that order, even though he used the words kiyum first, too late. Once you're made for it, you can't undo it. But if he says, Kayim umufarlech bebasachas, then hareze kayim. Because that's not called a hafara. Which is mashma only today. Doesn't matter. Because you only have the day to be made for it. Not mufar. Because tomorrow is after the Yom Shammai. Yes. And we don't put words in his mouth, because maybe what he meant was it's kaim for 1 hour, and after this 1 hour it's going to be mufar. No, he didn't say that. Hafara has to be verbalized, not implied. He says mufar lach. So that's a baydali of shita. In other words, if a guy says kaim lach sha'achas, and then after the hour he says mufar lach, do we say kaim sha'achas means once you're a kaim, it's la'olam? And we take a learn. You can be a mater the kiyum, but if you don't do that, you can't be made without making hataras nedarim. Or do we say Kaim Shachas only means 1 hour, and Taka after 1 hour there's no kiyum? It's still the Yom Shammai, so he said Afara. And therefore, whenever there's a suffix, Asura ben Nedarim, the Nidra, because it's a suffix Da'iraisa, but on the other hand, if she violated her Neder, she will not get penalties. The final few halachas is a hashkafic approach to Nedarim. And here's the context, at least a few words of Hasidus. Right? There's a skafia and there's a sapha. Nedarim it encourages us to live in the realm of his skafia. And many people who have certain attractions, naturally, to things that are prohibited, will do well if they're going to make a neder or a shua, which will help them abstain from that which must be abstained of. On the other hand, anything that's only part of klipas noigansh and not shalosh klipas hatameyos, part of our mission is to elevate that part of the world. See, so should you make nedarim? Should you not make nedarim? And here the Rambam lays it out like this: Halacha Chagimel. Mi shenadar nedarim kedein lechoinen deyoisem l'sakamayis. If a person's intent behind the neder is in order to better establish one's character, to help a person behave better, then we say such a neder is no'eh u'meshuba. For example, if a person he eats too much, he drinks too much. And the way you get rid of the overly eating is by saying for 1 year, like the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deis, you're right there for 40 days. Maybe this guy needs a whole year of abstinence. If a person is never obsessed with wine, alcoholic, and he says, I'm making a neder or a shua, sitting wine on me for a long time. Or if a person, theoretically, everything in moderation is good. Theoretically, abstinence in itself is an unholy thing. Sometimes you need it. But this guy is not trying to become abstinent. This person knows that once he begins drinking, he doesn't know how to stop. So he's aiming, I'm making a vow never to become shaken. I'm only going to make 2 lachaims, however you define it. Right? The Rebbe says only have 4 lachaims. That's advocating moderation. And the person is making a vow not to go beyond it. A person who's constantly pursuing illegal gain. A person is obsessed with guilt. And what he does is, never receive a gift. Or if a person is very arrogant with his or her great looks, and they make a vow to become a nazir. What does that have to do? It has everything to do, because when you finish your days of Nezirus, one of the steps you have to do is taglachas, you have to shave all of your hair. And these are the stories in the Gemara. And I cannot shave my hair. You make a vow of Nezirus, you corner yourself in order to take a Hasidic haircut. And regarding these nedarim, the sages say in a positive way, nedarim is yagla patience. However, there's another side. It's like a part of the divine service. Ella, ideally, without a neder. In other words, let's go. When the person is the most connected to the behema, you need nedarim. When a person merits with their avodah and God's help, they graduate, then continue a path of healthy moderation, which healthy moderation means you have to abstain of. There has to be the avodah of a skafia, but ideally without making the nedarim. And then, once you reach a madrega where you don't need to have that you completed to a certain point avodah of his skafia, you have to now go to a hisabcha, and a hisabcha actually will mean not to go away from, but to engage more or to use more of Olam Hazeh to avoid this Hashem, elevate it, and that's why. And it's a beautiful example, because what's a bama? A bama, it's a mitzvah to bring a korban of his beis. A person is going to say, "Let me do more of that mitzvah. Let me build a bama b'shas isur bamas." No, we don't do that. Even things that are good don't extend. Dayecha or dayoch masha asra Torah. God did not prohibit wine. God prohibited yain stam, but yain this make kiddush on wine. Then you should undo the neder. Worse, if a person breaks the vow, it's the end of the world. Again, that the Chachamim say that there is a time and there is a place. There are people who don't make vows. That's only regarding Nidrei Yisur. But as we began the beginning of Hilchos Nedarim, there's a second category called Nidrei Hegdish. Nidrei Hegdish are vows that people say to bring a korban. Oh, that's great. Mitzvah l'kaiman. The lo yishoel aleim. even though you can undo it. And that's the meaning of Tehillim, Nedari Lashem. Ashalim, David HaMelech took pride that he fulfilled his vows. And not he took pride for him being mashal on Nidrei. Nidrei Isur be mashal. Unless you fall into a category of Allah Chav Gimel. Nidrei Hegdish actually fulfill.
What about needed to give tzedakah?
Huh?
What about nowadays and needed to give tzedakah?
Saying that will be the same, that will be like Nidrei Hegdish. I'll tell you something that Ran says, just like by Hegdish, Amirase Ligavoya Kimisirase Lahediyat. Right? No kinyan is needed, and your words is a kinyan. You have opinions in halacha that making a verbal commitment is like a Nidrei Hegdish. There's actually opinions that say that when there is auctioning done in a shul, and a person throws his bid, oh, that would be such a good thing for the shul, but no one is going to bid. In other words, you made the commitment. In other words, yesh v'yesh. It's a gavaldik ending where you learn it. You have to get that clarity. And that's the way that Rebbe says in the beginning of one's avodah that hiskatria is necessary, and if you need nedarim, use it. And as a person graduates, if and when the person graduates, then the ultimate goal is to be magdish more of the world and not to run away from the use technology. We are starting the new series. Hilchos Nezirus, like in the general, the Rambam is going to begin with the general rules of Nezirus. There's going to be one yisoid. The yisoid is that making a vow to becoming a Nazir is included in the big umbrella category of Nidrei Isur, which is going to give us a lot of clarity in Nezirus. We actually spoke out the Sikha that I was addressing a classic question. Why do you have to have a whole parsha of the Torah about Nezirus? God told us that you have the power to make a neder. Forget about it. A person can say, wine, great product is asur on me. Tumas mace is asur on me. Taking a haircut is asur on me. A person can bind himself with just nedarim to have to do everything that a nazir has to do. Why do you have to have a separate project for Nezirus? So we spoke of the Rebbe has a gavaldik insight that going back to his kafir and his sapcha, there's two ways to abstain. One way to abstain is as that I have a weakness. I'm an alcoholic. I have to keep away from wine. Another way of abstinence is I'm a holy person. I am so holy that I'm removed from that. Nedarim is the first and Nezirus is the latter. That's the chassidus behind it. But anyways, we're going to learn about the basics of Nezirus. We're going to learn, amongst other things, that if a person takes upon himself to be a nazir only regarding wine, if you use the words nazir, since some of it is chal, all of it will be chal. Wow. And as we'll begin in this chapter and going on to the next chapter, unlike Nedarim, where we say Safek Nedarim Lahachmer, which is the rule, makes sense. It's a biblical Safek Daraisa L'Chumra, Safek Nezirus Lahakel. Wow. How can that be? I'll tell you why. The logic behind it is because since Nezirus demands karbonos at the end, a oila you can bring as an adav. You have to bring a oila, a chatos, and an asham. A chatos, there's no such a thing as a donation chatos. So that's why Safek Nezirus Lahakel, because if the Nezirus would go into effect, as we'll learn at the end of the next chapter, now that we don't yet have a Mizbeach, you can become a Nazir today, you just can't get out of it because you can't bring karbanis. And even when there is a Beis HaMikdash and a Mizbeach, if we have a Safek, whether you have to bring an animal chatos, you may not bring it. Chatos or oil could be brought Misafek, remember that. Behemoth's chatos can never be brought Misafek. So we have to be very careful if there's a doubt, and the halach is Safek Nezirus law. We're going to begin with the header. Hilchos Nezirus yesh b'cholan eser mitzvah shtei mitzvahs asay shmoyne mitzvahs loisa sevazel pratim aleph sheyagadol hanazir pera, that the nazir will have to let his hair. And by the way, a Nezirus is by a woman also, as we'll see clearly. And it's a pasuk in the Torah, isha, his or her. We're going to speak in the masculine; it's equal to the other gender. Let his hair grow long. Number two, shelo yigalach se'ari kolim, is in the negative. He may not shave his hair. Number three, shelo yishta hanase yayin. Not only can he not drink wine, but even karoivis yayin, a mixture that has wine in it, even vinegar that comes from wine. 4, shelo yochel anov lachem, he may not eat fresh grapes. 5, shelo yochel tzemukim, he may not eat raisins, which is dried out grapes. 6, shelo yochel chartzanim, we're going to touch chartzanim seeds. There's a machlekes v'shoyim chartzanim and zagin. Which one is which? We're going to go chartzanim are grape seeds, and zagin are grape peels. 8, that he's not allowed to enter the oil ames. Number 9, he may not contaminate himself by other contexts, separate oil and maga masa. And yud, the positive, sheyigalach ala korbanos, he should shave when or over the karbanis. Actually, the hair is burned. The Torah says while he's cooking the pot of the shlamim, we'll see details about that soon. When he finishes his Nezirus vow, or if God forbid he became tamei, the shayig or amazing. So there's other karbanis in which he has to bring to deal with the tuma and shave. And then he begins to count in the days of Nezirus again, as we'll see in the series. Ubir mitzvahs elu b'trakam elu. Perik Aleph has 17 halachas. Halacha Aleph. HaNezirus hu neder b'chlal nidrei isur. That's the most powerful yesod. It's not nidrei hegdish, it's nidrei isur. In other words, you're asking something that's permitted upon yourself. Shenemer, as it says, nosoi kiyachli. The key is the word lindoy. Lindoy neder nozel hazel Hashem. There's many other limudim. I know it sounds very repetitive. Yeah, Hashem is maramas, many things. But the fact that the Torah weaves Nezirus and neder, and if it's a neder, it's not neder hegdish. Even though you're going to get chayv to bring karbanos, because that's at the end. The main Nezirus is that which was permitted is now prohibited upon me. Mitzvahs I say. Number one, shegadol hanozir sa'aroishoi, shenemar gadol pera sa'aroish. And in Gilach Romain Israel, he violated the negative commandment during those days, as it says, Ka'ar lo yavel arosh. Number two, v'chein asur during the days of Nezirus litam al amesim. Or lechol devarim Moshe asar nakasu begefen hayayin kol yom in Israel. Halacha beis amar begilach. If you shave this hair, or if it became contaminated, guys, always remember, tuma doesn't mean tuma. It means tumas meis. A nazir can have tumas keri and any other tuma. There are many tumas. Tumas meis. He gets loikeshtayim. Why loikeshtayim? Not if he does both. If he just shaves, why loikeshtayim? He violated. I'll tell you why. Because since Nezirus is included in the Nedarim, so you have the general love for Nedarim, lo yachal devarim. Shekol l'kol Nedarim. It's amazing. And also for the specific item that the pasuk said regarding the Nazir. How great is that? Which actually means that if a Nazir is going to shave his hair, and he's going to become Tamei Tomas Meis, and he's going to drink wine, what is he going to get? 4 times Malchus. For the Layachol Devarim, for the Giluach, for the Tuma, and for the Yain, for the wine product. Nadar ben Nazir, and the Kim Nidrei Kim Tzvasai. Oh, so now in the reverse, if you can violate 3, then you fulfill 3 mitzvahs. Harei oisa shalosh mitzvahs asay ha'achaz k'chol ha'yetz mepiv yasem parshas matos. And he did the other one specifically regarding the Nazir, Gadel Peras Aroishoy, Paregidu. And the 3, what will be the third? No, there's no mitzvah to be tahar. You are tahar. It's just you can't. But growing hair is called a positive, and the third will be the shaving. Ashlish is Taglochasai, which comes together with your korbanis, that's included in one mitzvah. If a person says, I will not depart from this word until I will be a Nazir. You know what happens? He's immediately a Nazir. But if he did not actually begin behaving that way, then he's violating in the general negative commandment, which is regarding someone who makes a vow, who's delaying the vow. Now, when does that go into effect? The Rambam writes here, Miyad. We'll leave that now, but the key here, at least to focus, if a person violates Baal Ta'achar, they never get Malchus because it's a lav she'ein by Maisa. You're not doing it. Ve'ein loiken a lav zeh, lav she'ein by Maisa, ein loiken a lav. Halachei, ein oimrim in Nezirus. We don't say by Nezirus, achi yoytze b'svasam, da v'shamashvay, eitzel kol ha'am king and shabalibai. We don't focus exactly on the words that he said. As long as in his heart he wants to be a Nazir. And he said words which express, if you know what he has in his heart, those words would then mean to become a Nazir, even though it's a stretch to connect the intent with those words. He will be a Nazir, for example. If a Nazir was passing in front of this person, and all he says is, he wants to sound like God, right? Ekaz Hashem Hashem, but here it means I will be. If in his heart he meant I will be a Nazir, as long as the Nazir is passing by, then we can say I will be a Nazir. We can make that link. Even though he didn't say, I'll be like him, which he should have, but he didn't, doesn't matter. If he chaps onto a seer and he says, I will become attractive. Now, by the way, we mentioned right at the end of this series of Nedarim that people who are arrogant with their good looks, they can make a neder to become a nazir because they have to shave at the end. But during the days of Nezirus, you let your hair grow. And we are making an association to long hair, good looks. So if a guy says, I will be beautiful, I'll let my hair grow. Or it means maybe the ruchni is, I'll be keeping the mitzvahs connected to my hair. He didn't say that. He just says, I will be beautiful, grabbing onto his hair. That's enough. Wow. We really, as long as he had in mind to be a nazir. Or if he says, that's clear. I'm going to let my hair grow. I'm going to cultivate my hair. He never mentioned the word Nezirus. All of that is Nazir, as long as I will bring doves. Now, guys, what's interesting? Doves are not what a Nazir brings if everything goes the way it should. Siparim are brought by a Nazir if, God forbid, he became Tamei Mace. And he says, Harei Alai Siparim. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's such a stretch. First of all, it might mean I'm going to become a Nazir, and if I'll become Tamei, I'll be Chayv to read Siparim. Guys, you can bring birds as a Karban Oila, Nedava. So it's so far-fetched, even if there was a Nazir passing by him, Taka means nothing, because since Tziparim could be brought as a carbon Nedava, it's the main garnish. Another rule here is similar to Nedarim, because we began that Nezirus is in the category of Nidrei Yisur, and that is Kol Kinuye Nezirus, any nickname that people use to say the word Nazir is going to have the effectiveness as if the person said the word Nazir. For example, in the place, again, you have the Ilgan, people that are inarticulate, and they can't speak properly, and they can't say the word Nazir. But so they say Nazik, or Naziyah, Hosiyah. How do you say Nazir? Simple. I am only a Nazir regarding grape seeds. It's not only he says, I'm a Nazir from grape seeds. He says the words only. You know what? He becomes a Nazir, or only from the peels. Haneni Nazir, only that I can't shave. Haneni Nazir, only regarding Tumah. He says the words Bilvad, Pamba, Palgina Libura, Hanezi Nazir Gomur, holding to Nezirus Aleph. He didn't even know it. That's a thing. He thought that he's able to be a Nazir only from wine. Doesn't matter. Since he picked on one of the details which a Nazir indeed may not connect to, it's as if he said Hadeni Nazir Stam. That's a very powerful Allah. But if a guy says Hadeni Nazir grapes are dried figs, nothing to do with grapes, even though he thought, doesn't matter. Grapes is not connected to Nezirus, right from cakes of dried figs, which was customary then to make. Even though he's not allowed to do it, he made a neder. But nothing to do with Nezirus. If someone mixed a cup of wine with water and they gave it him to drink, and he said, you can argue he only meant not to drink the cup of wine. No, he said Nazir. Boom. If a person is he's bitter, or he, God forbid, he's in an angry state, or he's in a state of mourning, and they're trying to get him to drink to boost his mood. And in that context, he says, here we say he's only Nazir from that cup. Here he's not a Nazir. Because here, it was in the context of, you're trying to lift my spirits. I'm not ready yet. I would like to sulk in my misery now. Let me, I'm enjoying it. Don't take away that pleasure from me. In that case, he's not a Nazir. Halacha Yudbeis. Chen shikir, that they gave him a cup. And that's a terrible thing. It's just a terrible thing. Like, don't kick a person when he's down, is because there's a certain animalistic part in us that kicks a person when they're down. When you see a person that drank a lot, it's a terrible midah, but some people give him more. So the Rambam says, if he had a shikr, and he's already shikr, and now they want to make him a ganzen shikr, right, by fabrengens, the illness that some people have. Drink more. Why are they saying that? It's a mach. It's an illness. It's a nebuch on them. And Va'amar, and the guy, even though he's already after many lachaims, he has enough seichel to understand that whoever's pushing more mashk on him is not coming from anything that's good and holy and decent. And he says, Hareni Nazir Mimenu. Here also, not even though he used the word Nazir, he didn't mean Nazir. Harei also in that cup he can eat. He made a nether, but he's not chayv in Nezirus. Shalei Mischal and Elam. Don't kick me when I'm down. It's bad enough. I'm going to be sick. You're going to make me double sick for you to be. Another din. Once a person reaches a state of intoxication, and that's a halachic term, intoxicated like Lot. Why do we use that mashal? Because Lot had incest with two of his daughters, and Lot did not know while he was with them. Once a person reaches that phase, they are exempt from all the mitzvahs. So a person in that state that makes a vow, his words don't do anything. If they're patur min mitzvahs, so then they're being machayev themselves is ineffective. And by the way, that's the halachic reason why one is not allowed to get drunk or get stoned in here in LA, as it's called. In other words, since when a person is in a state of shikr like Loy, he doesn't have bechira, he doesn't have das, so he doesn't have the chiyuv of choosing the right or wrong. I'm not allowed to remove myself, imagine, from a chiyuv mitzvahs. No greater rebellion than that, even though that wasn't the intent. Just that's the halachic reason why it's aside of the health reasons. Okay. At that state, if you do a sin, you're not going to be chayv. Not you, that chicken. Because that's a very important halacha to remember. I'm a nazir on the condition that I can drink wine. On the condition that I would be allowed to be metam l'meisam, on the condition that haircuts I can take. He's again the same concept. Once some Nezirus is chal, it's all chal. Harei ze nazir for us the air conditioning went on. Gan Eden. That's called a classic. If you're saying I'm a nazir, don't define what a nazir means. If you make a stipulation against what's written in the Torah, to know your bottom. In contrast, not that the nazir va'aman. I didn't know that a nazir is also b'yayin. I didn't know that part. I didn't know that detail. Didn't know you can't shave. And had I known, I never would have made a neder. Harei ze nazir v'chayiv b'kulam. Whoa! Didn't we learn by Nedarim and neder b'tos? Yeah. But we learned today that if a guy says I'm only a nazir for one detail, once that one detail is chal, it's all chal. Who cares if this guy in Nezirus didn't know you can't shave the hair? He knew that you can't drink wine. He's not worse than the guy that says, I'm a nazir not to drink wine. And it's chal on that detail. Once it's chal for everything. From one of the three things. And we just said, however, if Amar, he says, I knew that I'm normally a nazir cannot have all of the above. I didn't know what applies to me. See, that's already called erroneous. That he made a neder based on an erroneous presumption. And why would he think that he's exempt? Because this guy never cannot live without wine, or because this guy makes a livelihood of working in the Chevra Kaddish. So he thought it's not shayach for me not to be metam l'meis. Then ein nazir. This will be the only case where we say it's like nidrei shegogois, for which you don't even have to be mated, as we learned, and all this is based on the yisoid that we have in Perek Aleph, that Nezirus is halachically included in the category of nidrei yisur. Halacha tezayin, if a person says, "Harei yodi nezira," my hand is a nazir, my leg is a nazir, means nothing. But if a person says, "My head is a nazir," my kaved, my liver, that's called a nazir. Why? Because any limb with which a person cannot live without, that limb means the whole person. Right? Interesting when it comes to the liver. You have to correlate this to Hilchas Treifus. But you got to go stira here. Final halacha yud zayin. Yin hoemed hareni nazir kishiyeli bein. Oh. So here we will apply the rule again. It's a neder. By neder we say So what did he mean? Only if he had a male son, that's called a bain. a person doesn't use the word ben for a child. And if Neudolei Bas or Tumtim or an androgynous, now guys don't appreciate, an androgynous is a suffix. It's not even a suffix because haloich achaloshim b'nei adam. Ben means male up until not that long ago, including in America. But if a guy says, Hareni Nozer Kshili Balod, I am a Nozer when I'll have an offspring. Offspring is used for a bas, for a tumtum, and an androgynous is a Nozer. Now comes the question. If a person, God forbid, one couple get pregnant and she has a miscarriage, now understand that there's a viable, there's not viable, there's many halachas about it. So then you would normally say, maybe there was a moment when there was a viable child. If that would be the case, then the Nezirus should be chal. We don't know whether it's viable, whether it was viable. This is called a suffix. So you would think by Nedarim, suffix Nedarim lahachmir. This is the first line we're going to do. Suffix Nezirus lahakim. And therefore, he feel it ain't or nozir. Not suffix. No. Even though he had a chance, he never removed the vow. He said, when I'll have a volod, I'm going to become a nozir. So if later, God blesses them with another offspring, and now beginning and learning the final chapter of today, Hilchos Nezirus, Pelig based, it's all based on the Yesod. Since Nezirus is a extension of, it's unique, but it is not unique. It's part of Nidrei Isur. What did we learn regarding Nidrei Shgagois, Nidrei Havoy, Nidrei Anosim, Nidrei Zeruzim? We'll explain what that means over here. They are ineffective by Nedarim. They will be ineffective when it comes to Nezirus. Gavaldik. And we're going to learn regarding the Katan Shehigia Lo'aynas HaNedarim. We learned that yesterday, the big Chiddush, the Mufla Samach Le'ish, since Nezirus is an extension of Nidrei Isur, and a person has a koyach, not only when they're bar bas mitzvah, we will see how that affects dinim of Nezirus and a big chiddush of the Rambam. We're going to see that a father can make his son into a nazir, as they did to Shimshon. It's a real thing. It's not just chinuch, more than chinuch. And we're going to conclude the chapter regarding someone who makes a vow of Nezirus bisman hazeh, that it's perfectly effective. But you can never get out of it, even if you said, I'm a nazir for 30 days, because you go out of your Nezirus like a taras ha-mishpach. A woman can be after menopause 1,000 years. If she didn't do a hefsek tara, she was nakim and mikveh, she'll never become tohida. She'll be just as a nida as a young woman who has her vesses. Once you make a vow of Nezirus, even if the days ended, you are theoretically able to do the steps to get out of it. One of the necessary steps are karbanis. If you cannot bring karbanis, you can't get out of the state of Nezirus. Chavra Peirik Beis has 22 halachas. L'chaim, this is Azoy Gishmak. Halacha. Hanoider ben Nozer. Either b'shoigek. I'll give you a great example. A person says that Hareni Nozer imochalti hayoim. If I ate today, I'm a Nozer. Then the guy ate today. But when he said the words of the vow, he thought he didn't eat. Mikan b'chlal, that it's good to have such a nida. You don't remember whether you ate or not. It's not such a big thing eating. That's called a neder. That's another shoygik. You made it on an erroneous presumption. And the Nedarim are not valid, the Nezirus, it won't go into effect. Even though de facto you ate. You forgot when you said it. Oy bo'oines. And what's the bo'oines? Someone compelled you to make a vow. Like we learned before, a guy's collecting taxes, not the IRS, when they collect it legitimately. In the old country where it was illegal, they collect the taxes illegally, and to impress upon the tax collector, you say, if I have that which you think I have, I can't eat meat, but you were compelled to make it. Or you made a neder l'zaris chaverin. I'm inviting you to come to me, and you're not coming. So what do I do like a good friend, making you feel guilty? If you don't come to my house, then I am bound by this and that vow. And you're going to have rachmanas on me. But I'm only making it to be bezaras you in the old way through using guilt of making you come to my house. Or if I made an exaggeration. Wow, so many people passed. If I didn't see 600,000 soldiers passing here, then I'm never going to have meat. There were many people, there weren't 6, you exaggerated. All of these cases, like we learned in the previous in Nezirus, like we learned by Shuas, and Nedarim, Nezirus, same. Now, Misha Nadav Benazir and the Nichamal Nidroi, like a Neder, you can do Hataras Nezirus. Halacha beis, Mishnah the Nazir, and he went to bring his karbanis, and when he comes to bring his karbanis, he discovers that they were stolen. He discovers even only one animal was stolen. If when you made the vow of Nezirus, then you still had the animals, then you are a Nazir. But if you made a vow of Nezirus, and there was a money, you have to have money for karbanis, and you only made it because you thought you had the animals. You had them. Someone stole it. You didn't know yet. That's called a shoygig again. But had you known that information, you never would have made it. Because that's called a Nezirus. Next thing, Hamas, it's easy because we're mamish correlating. I mean, there'll be exceptions. This is part of Nedarim. Hamas is Nezirus, a person who extends, right, a vow of Nezirus. The Rambam will explain that in the next halacha. He's a Nazir. As we learned, Hamas is Beneder, halacha dalet. Hoyun Nazir, a Nazir is going in front of me. And I just say, I am like him. Oh, I'm extending his vow to me. I didn't mention the word Nazir. Hadez and Nazir. But Nadar Chaveda ben Nazir. One other guy makes a vow. And I say, ooh, hupi kifith miyayin. My mouth is like his mouth regarding wine. Now, what did we learn in the last chapter? Once I say wine, if I have in mind Nezirus, we understand me making a vow of Nezirus regarding wine. And once it's chal for wine, it's chal for everything. Point is, I'm extending his isur to me. Or, so'ari, kiso'aroi milahi gazes. Then he's a bona fide nazir. V'chenim shama, if he heard a guy taking a vow, and all he said was, va'ani, as long as he said a teichidei dibur, not, guys, this can go on forever. And then a third guy, not hearing the first guy, then pshita. Even if the third guy only heard the second guy saying the words va'ani, and the third guy only said teichidei dibur of the second guy. He didn't say a teichidei dibur of the first guy. But it's going to be effective. Oh, what did we learn in the last series? And if the first guy is going to be shoyal on his Nezirus, then they will all collapse. Because one is attached to and therefore based on hanging on the other. Hey, if a person says, I'll become a Nazir when I have a son. And listen to this, and he says, Va'ani. What does he mean, Va'ani? He didn't mean Va'ani that when I'll have a son, I'll be a Nazir. Va'ani means right now. That's the Kavanah. The Kavanah was on the Iked Inyan, not on the condition. I got excited. You're a Nazir, I'm a Nazir. I'll be a Nazir when you'll have a son. It's going to help. He's putting pressure on the other. And the Bachlala doesn't mean Nezirus. Why now? So what did he mean by that? I would wish that you would have a son the way Kamai. Now, why didn't he say that explicitly? So there's an interesting inyan that when a person has affectionate feelings for the other, they are not always comfortable to say it to the other. Halachic concept. It means if I have ahava towards my chaver Reuven, I'll be more comfortable to tell it to the crowd, I like Reuven, than to tell Reuven, I like you. That's the nature. So he didn't say, these are words of love. I want for you to have something. He said Va'ani because it was boish machavere. Now, blame. I'm a Nazir if someone else will have a son, and their friend heard, then he says Va'ani. No, he didn't say it in front of him. Now we have a suffix. Maybe he means to be a Nazir. And here, since he's not befanav, we say he didn't want to say I like you. But here, chaloi befanav, that's why there's a doubt. And what do we do? That's the here clearly. You have a doubt, right? So you have a doubt. Be machmir? No. Safek Nezirus lahakol, like we said. One of the karbanis is a chatos can only be brought by a vadai, so halachic can be resolved by saying safek Nezirus lahakol. Halacha ches. Shnayim shoyim al derech, and they saw a guy coming towards them, and they're having a debate. Who's coming? For Amar Echad min Shnayim zeh likroseinu Shimon is coming. The other guy says, no, Reuven is coming, and I am a Nazir if it's Reuven. The other guy says, yeah, I'm a Nazir if it's Shimon. And this third guy reaches them, and we discover, for example, he's Reuven. Then Hadez a Nazir. This is not an Nidre Shagogis. The guy that made the vow actually believed it wasn't Uv. It wasn't Uv, and he's a Nazir. If it was Shimon, then the other guy is a Nazir. But what happens if the guy never comes to them? He turns around and they don't know who he is. So that's called Suffolk. We just learned a big cloud, a Chiddush, an exception. Suffolk Nezirus Lahakel. No one is a Nazir. Not L'chura. Ein Echad Mehem Nazir. Halacha Tes. V'chein ha'oiver areini Nazir. If you have in this pile this amount of a product, and then when you come to measure it, you discover that right now someone broke in and stole some of it. Now, was it stolen prior to your vow? So now there's only 99 because some ganav took away one, but maybe when you made the vow it wasn't stolen. You don't know. You don't have the tekna, you don't have the cameras. Fight it. You have a suffix. Suffix Nezirus Lahakel. Halachiyut. Now gets the mouth. And they see an animal called a koi. Whether a koi is a buffalo, whether a koi is a bison, you have certain animals that halachically are safek chaya, safek behema. In some dinim that are like chaya, in some dinim that are like behema. So in some dinim they're not like chaya, in some not like behema. And one guy says, "Hareni nozir that this is a chaya." Other guy says, "I'm a nozir that's a behema." Nah, bad picture, Keva. What are you talking? That's a goat.
It's a hybrid.
I'm a nozir if it's not a chaya. I'm a nozir if it's not a behema. You have a big machlokes. And one guy says, I'm a nozir that it's not this and not that. And the final guy says, I'm a nozir if it's both. You know what? Every single statement is emes. Not no one is a nozir. They are all nazirim. Why? Because by a koi, many people pronounce it kviv. By a koi, yesh, by derachim, for certain halachas, the Rambam is going to write some of them. It's a chayim. Certain derachim, which means halachas, it's a behema. Yesh by derachim, yesh by derachim, she'ein shava lechayv lebehema. And similarly, if you have this androgynous, and a bunch of guys are debating, man, is it a woman? The nodru al derech shenodru elo b'koi, everyone makes a vow. All of them are nazirim. Because androgynous, the Rambam is going to go through some of the halachas. Yesh by derachim, that he's like a man. Bin derachim, a woman. Derachim, that he's nisht a man, nisht a woman. Derachim, that he's a man and a woman. And halacha yudal, the Rambam goes into some details. V'chol derachim ha'elu. In other words, what we say is that when they were debating whether the koy is a behem or a chaya, you know what it means? The premise is Yidden are not speaking about the biology of the animal. Yidden meant halachically. Beautiful. We are having a debate. Does he have an ish or is he an isha? For a Yid, it means we're debating halachically what is that person. Because what is there other than the Torah? And halachically, everyone was right. Because if they would have been referring to what is that person biologically, and you can argue the guy's not an ish. He's both. Maybe he's both. He's not an ish. He's not an isha. She's not an isha. But since when people are debating regarding an androgynous or regarding the kvi or the koi, they mean what is he in the context of mitzvahs, means in the context of the Torah. They're not debating b'tivay b'toy daltoy. So since that is the context of their machlokes, everyone made a right statement. For example, a good thing. You have to cover the blood only of a chayim. You don't cover the dam by a behema. And the halacha is that when you shech a koy, you got to cover the blood. In that din, chayim. Chaylev, behema, hu kares. Chaylev chayim mutter. You know what the din is by a koy? Chayil boy asuk behema. So the guy that says, I'm a nazir, if he's a behema, he meant if he has a din of a behema. Yes, he does. He didn't say exclusively, but he has a din of a behema. Vareu kalayim, ima behema machayim. When there's a din, guys, you can't be marbia, you can't crossbreed animals. A buffalo may not be crossbred, not with a behema, not with a chaya. It can only mate with its own species. When we are involved, that's the only thing that we can be actively involved in. You have to shecht it like a chaya, like a behema. It's not like a grasshopper. The Rambam is saying these are not. We're not going through all the dinim of a kohen. Point is, he's just pointing out that since every statement is correct regarding one or some mitzvahs, that is the meaning of the words, and therefore the Nedarim, the Nezirus is chal. And the same thing regarding an androgynous. How is he like a man that if a semen leaves his body, metama b'lev and kamashim, and a balkeri, a zov, If he gets a period, this androgynous. If it ain't an income an Evan guy, just to know, an Evan who steals, and when you are allowed to sell him, the din is you can only sell a ish as an Evan. This androgynous cannot be sold, which means another thing, a father has the right sometimes to sell his minor daughter as an Amaviyah. Since an androgynous can never be sold as an Evan, can never be sold by the father, so Einoi Keish, Einoi Keish. It's a halachic correct statement. Another thing, if someone murders this person, God forbid, they're going to be put to death for killing a person. But how are you going to go? Like if a person kills a man, like if a person kills a woman. That's enough of a halacha. The Yesh and the Rambam writes there are other things regarding an androgynous, and we're going to explain them later. The point is that since every statement is correct, even only once or even only sometimes in the context of mitzvahs, that is what each person meant when they were having this machlokes. If he's a man, I'm a nazir. If he's a woman, yeah, and every statement was correct. And amongst the people, some of them were pikchen. Guys, in this context, pikech doesn't mean someone who sees with the brain. It means he can see with his eyes. It's connected. And some of them were blind. Again, in other words, we don't have to have for all of what your statement is correct. We need to have only for some of it. That's the b'chein in your base. Because the guy says the koi is a chaya. It doesn't have to be regarding everything. It can be regarding some of it. So you have a group of people, and one guy makes it, I'm a nazir that these people are pikhin. Guys, even if some of them are blind, it doesn't matter. Some of them are pikhin. And the other guy says, Hanei nazir she'ein elu pikhin. Amar echad hanei nazir she'elu sumin. Amar echad hanei nazir she'ein elu sumin. Amar echad hanei nazir she'elu pikhin v'sumin. Every statement is correct. Let's get moving. Even though the guy is only 12 years old, he is a bona fide nazir. Guys, he brings korbanos, huge chiddush of the Rambam. That means if he ends his term prior to bar mitzvah, he brings korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not chulin ba'azara. You have to appreciate this. Wow. Like other, why? Because it is like other nedarim. The unique din of mufla hasamach leish. Even more than that. Another din. A man can administer a vow of Nezirus on his son, even prior to the son reaching the age of nedarim. How do you know that? God told that to Moshe Rabbeinu. But this is not by anything other than Nezirus. He didn't even tell it to him in the, direct. He made us say, my son, that son is a nazir. Hadei is a nazir, and now it's amazing. The Ben has the Shasa Kabein. You can argue, what does this shtika mean? He's a minor. It's amazing. It's unique. He was quiet, Hadei is a nazir, and now b'chayit ha'av linoy boy. You can't say he's mechuyev because he's not a bar mitzvah. But the father has to do the father's part to make sure that the child is not going to take a haircut, not going to be mekamal mason, etc. Ve'im nitma, maybe karban tuma. Who is maybe the father? It's unbelievable. The guy is 2 years old. The father will bring the karbanas tuma. Uchshiyashlam Nezirus say maybe karban tara, like any other Nezirim Gedolah. Wow. Halacha tezvav. But if the child, even though normally he has no das, but if he doesn't want and he makes a protest, or if other relatives make a protest, or other relatives come to here in protest, someone did an act that revealed that that relative, he meaning the child, or the Kareivim, they don't want the Nezirus, you would argue only the father has that right. And who made a protest? A relative. So what? No, it is. Their protest is effective. So there is an overlap. That means that when you have a katan, what's higia lo oinas hanadarim, he can make a neder of Nezirus, and his father, since he's not yet an ish, can also be matanim in a Nezirus. Halacha to Zayin hagoyim eman Nezirus, because it says in Parshas Nosi that on the Yisrael. Halacha Yud Zayin Noshim and Avodim yesh lahem Nezirus. However, the Ha'av and the Baal, as we learned in the previous segment, they can be made for the Nezirus or Isha if they want, like any other Nedarim. It's Inui Nefesh. It's Inui Nefesh. And the father B'chlal can be made for B'yoyim Shomim. When it comes to an Eved, so we said an Eved can make Nezirus. Yesh l'Rabbi means that Rabbi could force him to drink or to become Tomei L'meis whenever the Rabbi wants. In other words, when it comes to a wife, if the husband is not mefed on that day, he's being makayim. The Rabbi can nullify it anytime he wants on the Eved. But the aim loy kafa oisoi, then loy ben Nezirus. Allah yudches. Not that who Eved. Other Nedarim, not Nezirus, that have Inui Nefesh, or that they're going to prevent them from doing work, or if he made a declaration, Erki Olai, there isn't even a need for the master to force him out of it. To begin with, it was not effective. Therefore, if a person says, I'm prohibiting Chaim Yankel's fruit to Shimon, not the fruit is yours, not the person is yours. The same thing is regarding an Eved. The exception is Nezirus. But if he makes a vow that does not bring about any inui, nor anything that will prevent him from doing work, then fakert, and the master cannot get involved in it. Now, let's go back to Nezirus. Not that Abdi bin Nezirus, and the master says Mufarlach, big chiddush. The master doesn't have to say Mufarlach. The master just has to give him wine. You know what? To whom do you say Mufarlach? To a free person. His statement, Mufarlach, means I am freeing you. And now, worse, it's not even Mufar. The way you undo the neder of Nezirus of an Eved is not through Hafara. And since you did not force him as you do to an Eved, but you were mefer the way you do it to Bnei Choyden, Gilodatoi, that he's freeing him, and Yatzel L'Chedus, you will have to give him a document of emancipation. But Yatzel L'Chedus. Right, Allah Yutez, he makes this vow and he runs away, or the Rabbi goes away, since it's Chal, so then Hareza also L'Shvesyayin. Kadesh it's Tayir. So then we say, this guy will be. You would argue that since the Rabbi, if the Rabbi would have been here, the Rabbi would have been koifer. So maybe he should not be bound by it, because the Rabbi's silence is ineffective because he's not here to be silent. Nevertheless, he has to keep it because that will be a medium to force him to come back to his master, because it's very difficult, evidently, for some people to live without wine. Not that the Hishmon Nezirusay, the Gilach B'Loyoda Rabbi, V'Chakach Yosel L'Cheirus. So since he kept it, even though the Rabbi was not there to be mavatal it, Yotza Yidei Nedarim. Aval Nedarim Gilach, the Yotza L'Cheirus. In other words, since the Nezirus was not completed, and the completion of the Nezirus is shaving his hair, and therefore he has to be noig all of the days again. Nitma, what does that mean? That normally a free person will first have to bring the karbanai satum, right? He right away begins it anew. Very good. And more than that, he will not bring the karbanos that a free person who becomes tamid during the Nezirus, he doesn't have to do that. Nezirus neheges b'fnei abayis, v'sholoi b'fnei abayis. It's not temple related. Therefore, we should not be nazir b'zman hazeh. Haleizen nazir lo oilam. Why lo oilam? Because since we don't yet have a bias, which really means karbanos, kadesh yavi karbanosov. I'm saying that because the Rambam paskins that we bring karbanos, even though there's no Beis Hamikdash. But here we're just putting it all together. It happens to be that we're going to learn later. There's something called the Nezir Oilam. A Nezir Oilam is allowed to lighten his hair every 12 months. We're going to learn the different types of Nezirus. This guy will be in that category. Halacha Aleph, Ein HaNezirus Nehegas Ela B'Eretz Yisrael. This din, very important. This din is not a Doiraisa, that's the Rabbanan. With the Rabbanan, you can't be a Nazir b'chutz la'aretz. I'll tell you why. Not Nezirus. Yeah, Nezirus, not Nezirus. Because the Chachamim made a Gzeira. It's called Tumas Eretz Ha'amim. Tumas Eretz Ha'amim means that we have a chashash that someone was buried. You're Tamei Lameis. When you're Tamei, you can't count your Nezirus. But since the Tumas is only Midrabanan, so this is Midrabanan as we'll see. So you can only count it in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, Mishnah Nazir b'chutz la'aretz, and to be a Nazir in Eretz Yisrael for all of the days of his or her Nezirus. Therefore, Mishnah Bezman Hazeh b'chutz la'aretz, koifen oisim al Eretz Yisrael. You can't get out of your Nezirus Bezman Hazeh. So what? So we lived in the Holy Land, they lived there forever. The Yanoyik Nezirus Asham Achi Yamus. Or the Mashiach is coming. Achi Yivana Beis HaMikdash. V'yaknav Korban V'miloisim Ein Yisrael. Final halacha chav calls manchu b'chutz la'aretz. Don't think that since midrabanan you can only count down the days of your Nezirus while you are in the Holy Land. It means that you're scot-free. No, you have to be noyeg Nezirus b'chutz la'aretz, but you don't count your days down. That's the final halacha. Calls manchu b'chutz la'aretz. Harei zor also lishnes yayin. Biblically, you cannot be b'tamal l'meisim. You cannot shave your hair. Even though these days midrabanan won't count for you. I'll give you a great thing. If a person is a nazir and they become tamei mace, the days of tumah don't count. But the nazir cannot drink wine during those days. No, same thing over here. Now, he'll be like him. The point that Amma wants to make is that Nezirus biblically is chal b'chutz la'aretz. But since the Chachamim were goyzer first on Gush Eretz Ha'amim, and then they were goyzer on Avir Eretz Ha'amim, where we can say Al Eretz Ha'amim. So therefore, you have to count it down only in the Holy Land. Ayasher Koyach, to be continued. Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That was great.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right.